It's time for business news here on France 24. I'm Kate Moody. The Eurozone's two largest economies have recorded disappointing inflation levels for the month of July. Germany, considered the motor for the Eurozone economy, saw consumer prices rising at a rate of just 0.8% compared to a year ago. That's the lowest level of growth in 4 years. In France, the picture was even more dismal, with an inflation rate of just 0.5%. Month on month, prices actually fell by 0.3%. Now, other Eurozone economies have also reported lower than expected inflation, and there are growing fears that the bloc could slip into deflation. While lower prices sound like a good thing for consumers, a spiral of falling prices can actually hamper economic activity, reducing overall consumer spending and dragging down the wider economy. The UK got some better news, as official figures showed that the unemployment rate had edged down towards a 6-year low. The number of jobless people fell by 132,000 to just over 2 million. That's a rate of 6.4%, the lowest since late 2008. The government, though, has expressed concern about low wage inflation. Average wages, excluding bonuses, rose by just 0.6% to the year ending in June, the slowest rise since records began in 2001. The Bank of England says that will play into the decision about if and when to raise interest rates. We got still more economic data this Wednesday from Japan, where the economy shrank by the biggest percentage since the earthquake 3 years ago. That's largely because of a sales tax increase that took effect in April. It will put more pressure on the economic policies of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, as William Hildebrand explains.
The numbers are in, and they don't look encouraging. Japan's economy took its biggest hit since 2011, when the country was devastated by an earthquake and tsunami. A steep decline of 1.7% after 2 previous quarters of growth. But the drop was expected. In April, Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe announced a rise in sales tax from 5% to 8%. His effort to curb the world's biggest debt burden led to a shopping frenzy. Since then, consumer spending has fallen 5%, but officials say there's no reason for concern.
I think it's important to look at the economic trend as a whole and not be carried away with the fluctuations of a spike due to last-minute demand and the subsequent reactionary downturn which the increase in sales tax brought about.
The International Monetary Fund has endorsed Abe's economic policy known as Abenomics. It expects Japan will see a recovery in the second half of the year. Business investment was better than expected, and exports are forecast to grow. Under Abenomics, Tokyo's Nikkei stock market hit record highs. In 2013, it rose 57%. But the IMF says more must be done in the way of structural reforms, such as loosening the labor market and easing regulation on various sectors. Abe also expects a heavy rebound by the end of the year, and if the Prime Minister gets what he wants, he's expected to raise the sales tax to 10% in 2015.
The markets proved quite resistant to all that data this Wednesday. Europe followed a positive trend from Asia. Germany's DAX leading gains there and closing up nearly 1.5%. The CAC 40 here in Paris ending up 0.78. The markets have been driven by optimism about the situation in Ukraine, as well as some strong results from the utilities and insurance sectors. Turning to some of the day's other business headlines now, earnings for the Hong Kong airline Cathay Pacific soared in the first half of the year. Net profit rose to $45 million, nearly 15 times what was earned in the same period a year ago. The figures were driven by strong demand for its long-haul flights, especially new ones to the U.S., but Cathay has warned that it's facing increased competition from low-cost carriers in Asia, as well as high fuel prices. Sales of Sony's PlayStation 4 have hit the 10 million mark less than a year after the gaming console debuted. Its competitor, Microsoft's Xbox One, which also hit the market last November, had sold about half that number by last month. And the Italian fashion house Roberto Cavalli may be becoming Russian. Talks are underway for the investment arm of Russia's VTB Bank to buy a majority 60% stake in Cavalli for 500 million euros. VTB is Russia's second-largest state-controlled bank and has recently been hit by Western sanctions. But that doesn't seem to be a deterrent for the fashion designer, who's been trying to sell part of his business for years. That's all for this business bulletin. Do stay tuned to France 24.